Good morning. Welcome back to Freedom's Pep Rally. Johnny James, your buddy, your pal. I'm your friend. I am your friend. Don't ever forget that. I am your friend in freedom. God bless America. Unapologetically saying Merry Christmas and all that. If you want to say Happy Holidays to me, I don't care. I don't care. It is the holidays, but I'll say Merry Christmas to you if you don't mind, and just say, well, thank you. You too. That's if somebody says anything to me, any holiday. If somebody says happy, I'm not Jewish, but if somebody says to me, and I've got Jewish friends, I had a lot of Jewish friends. If they say Happy Hanukkah to me, you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say same to you or Happy Hanukkah to you. That's what I'm going to do, because there's nothing wrong with that. That's good. That's friendly. That's nice. And that's how I'll be. I've got friends who are Jewish who come up and say Merry Christmas, and I will return Happy Hanukkah, because I know. If you don't know, I think we get too in the weeds on some of this stuff. Anyway, let's get out of the weeds. Let's go to the live stream here. We have a special guest this morning, and I was looking forward to this last week. Founder and president of the am I saying Hosea?
Hosea, like the book in the Bible in the Old Testament. Right. Hosea. Yeah,
that's what I thought. This is Terry Beatley, and your book is What If We've Been Wrong? And it's actually an extended title. I was talking about it on Amazon. It's called My Promise to America's Abortion King. And so we're going to be talking about, you're obviously very pro-life, mm-hmm. as are we here on this show. And, one of the things I say, and I've read your bio, but just so you know where I stand on this show is, despite what the mainstream media says about the so-called heartbeat, I maintain that life begins the moment the egg is fertilized, because that's when the trajectory is set for human life. Is that where you stand?
Absolutely. Okay, life begins at conception.
There you go. So we're on the exact same page.
Yeah.
And now you've had a lot of, is it fair to say you've had battles with Planned Parenthood over the years?
Well, they prefer to ignore me.
Yeah.
If I were in their shoes, I would want to ignore Jose Initiative for as long as I possibly could. And the reason being is the father of America's industry of abortion. I made a promise to that man. He was dying of cancer. This is back on December 1st, 2009. Because what Planned Parenthood knows that the vast majority of Americans don't know is that the father of America's industry of abortion became 100% unequivocally pro-life, and he became a Christ follower. And so it's the story of the century that I believe, and I believe God's shown me never to quit, because it's the story of divine mercy that every single American needs to know. So for your audience, who clearly are conservative and pro-life and all that, every single one of you needs to know this story, because then you're equipped to be able to stand in front of Planned Parenthood and other pro-aborts and be able to give this important information, and many hearts and minds change, particularly the people in that mushy middle. And we know there are millions of them.
Right. Bernard Nathanson, by the way, was the man's name, correct?
That's it. Yeah. Dr. Bernard Nathanson. And it's a beautiful story of conversion. It's a story of humility. What we're told today to be prideful and all this, right? Pride is the worst of all sins. Well, here's the father of America's industry of abortion, who personally was responsible for the death of 75,000 babies and skidding the greasing the skids, if you will, for Roe v. Wade. And after the advent of real-time ultrasound, which happened 6 months after he celebrated Roe v. Wade, he was, all over the media. Well, 6 months after Roe v. Wade, this doctor is now the chief of obstetrics at St. Luke's Hospital in New York City. And the hospital rolls in this brand new technology called real-time ultrasound. And what America doesn't know, the vast majority of Americans, what they don't know is that the father of the abortion industry, who co-founded NARAL Pro-Choice America, he literally trained Planned Parenthood doctors on how to kill. He sees the baby for the first time on real-time ultrasound, and the reality of the humanity of the baby in the womb pierces his heart, and he begins to bond with the baby. And what America doesn't know is that he's resigning from NARAL Pro-Choice America on the second anniversary of Roe v. Wade. And by 1979, he became 100% unequivocally pro-life, and he was still an atheist.
Wow. Now this is the correct me if I'm wrong, because names elude me sometimes. He was the subject of the movie Roe v. Wade, right? One of the subjects.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, he was, probably the main character in Roe v. Wade.
Right.
And it's funny because I'm actually in a movie contractual agreement with Dr. Nathanson's ex-wife on a movie specifically only about the life and time of Dr. Bernard Nathanson. And I forgot to tell your audience something. So when I flew I was at a prayer vigil. It was in November of 2009. And I was fervently asking the Lord for direction on what he wanted me to do with the years of researching the history of Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood and Black genocide and all this. And because I had been going into in Virginia, just the Black church in Virginia, and sharing about this horrible history of Planned Parenthood, and the response of the people was so beautiful. And they said, Terry, never quit doing what you're doing. We didn't know anything about Margaret Sanger's Negro Project.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I'm sure you're well versed in it. And so the response of the people, it was just so encouraging. So I was at a prayer vigil in November 2009 and fervently asking the Lord, what did he want me to do with all this information and the experiences of crossing the racial divide on one of the most sensitive issues of all time? All I could hear, and I mean it literally, it's all I could hear was go interview Dr. Bernard Nathanson. And I sat back in the chair and I said, God, why would Dr. Nathanson ever say yes to my request for an interview? Because I looked at him as, he's like, not only was he the father of the abortion industry, he was one of the biggest voices out there for pro-life until the day he died. And it was just silence. I knew I was supposed to try to get the interview. And so I found his number, called up there, and his wife answered. And she said, Terry, my husband is 83 years old. He's terminally ill with cancer, and he has not granted an interview in well over a year. She said, all I can tell you is put your request in writing, fax it up here, and I'll present it to my husband, but don't get your hopes up. So I wrote this little letter, and it happened, I put it in the book. And she called me back a couple days later, and she said, to her amazement, her husband said yes. And she asked me if I could fly up on December 1st, 2009. Now, why is that date so relevant today? You're going to love this.
Okay.
It's because the Supreme Court chose December 1st, 2021 to be the day that they hear the Dobbs case. That was exactly 12 years to the day that I'm sitting in New York City, in Manhattan, and sitting with the father of the abortion industry. And at the end of the interview, I said, Dr. Nathanson, if you have a message for America, tell me what it is. And I promise you, I'll deliver it across our country until it becomes common knowledge or until Roe v. Wade is overturned. And that was like, woo, a question that changed the trajectory of my life because of what he said.
Unbelievable. And this is all documented in the book, correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's all in the book. And if I can, let me just say it very quickly, because if not, I misuse our time. Dr. Nathanson said, yes. He said, continue teaching the strategy of how he deceived our nation. And then he said, and then tell America that the co-founder of NARAL says to love one another. Abortion is not love. Stop the killing. The world needs more love. And I'm all about love now.
Yeah. That's okay.
Right now, that when the average American and the millions of people who are in the mushy middle who keep voting for pro-abortion candidates, when they find out that the father of America's industry of abortion admitted to deceiving and exploiting American women and their babies, and he became pro-life, and then he became Christian, you watch what happens. I project that millions of people will repent for their apathy, for their willful ignorance, and for their participation. And that means voting for pro-abortion candidates and or having an abortion or pushing a wife or a girlfriend into an abortion mill. There's a day of reckoning getting ready to happen because my God, who I serve, continues to push this forward all the way to December 1st, 2021. Do you all realize, I'm looking at all the feedback we're getting here.
Yeah.
There are 365 days in the year that the Supreme Court could have chosen. Yeah. They chose the anniversary of the father of America's industry of abortion, saying, stop the killing, stop. And if the father of America's industry of abortion, who trained Planned Parenthood, who admitted to lying to our nation, to our judges, to our everybody, if he can change, why cannot every single American be pro-life?
I agree with you, and I want to. We've got a lot to delve into here, and we've got some comments as you mentioned on the screen. I'm getting them all over the place. Unfortunately, I only have access to the screen right in front of me, and the ones you're seeing on the screen. I'm getting others though. Let me, by the way, if you want to go out and get the book or you want to get it on Amazon, What If We've Been Wrong? Keeping My Promise to America's Abortion King. And that's Dr. Bernard Nathanson, who is the main subject in Roe v. Wade, which the movie is great. That speech, and I forget the senator's name who made the speech, tearful speech on the floor of the Senate. It just took my breath away. It brought me to tears, that speech. You know the one I'm talking about?
Yeah, and I'm forgetting the name.
Yeah, see, I did.
You know, it's just, it's a story that pierces the heart.
Yeah. Because,
first off, as a woman, the idea that there was two men in New York, Lawrence Lader and Dr. Nathanson, who literally devised a plan of deception. And so I'm watching some comment over here about Lori somebody, or maybe it's not Lori, but it's mocking me, and I'm laughing inside because sadly the joke is on women, that these two atheist men in New York devised a plan to deceive American women, and they've admitted to all this. They admitted to it. So if Dr. Nathanson could be intellectually honest with himself. And this is a man who killed his own baby. He aborted one of his own children, and then he paid an abortionist to kill the very first child. Okay. So my point is that if we're willing to humble ourselves and to say, you know what, America, just like slavery, we have had this issue wrong for 40 some years.
Okay, I agree with you, but I also understanding there. I mean, we have all sorts in our mostly conservatives, but still we have agnostics, atheists, people who, you know, God for whatever reason is not a big part of the issue here, and they're, you know, they have other questions about what. Well, first of all, it's a life, okay? Just as a human being, taking God out of the, you know, out of the picture, it's a human life. And every human life is worthy. It's worthy of having a chance. Now, Laurie points out, if I can get back to one of her comments, we've got Josh and Jim and Jeff and Cindy and Melissa, and Laurie had poor. Okay, you don't understand poor people, and I've heard this before. I mean, this isn't new. People say, well, you know, a woman, she's poor, she can't afford to have a baby. What is a woman who is down and out? She's living on the streets. She's pregnant. What is she supposed to do? What say you, Terry?
There's a very loving response to that. We don't kill people because they're going to be born into poverty. We don't kill people. For every unwanted baby, there is a couple out there who wants to adopt an infant. There's a shortage, if you will, of infants, okay? Because there's so many now infertile people.
Yeah.
Sadly, that many are infertile because sterile because of prior abortions. We now know that.
True.
So we don't kill people because of the sins of the father. We don't kill people because they're poor. But there's a beautiful thing called adoption.
Yeah.
And the abortion industry has done a heck of a good job over the years, you know, making it look like that's not a viable solution. Absolutely it is. And now today, even open adoptions, there's so many people who want an open adoption. So it's like Dr. Nathanson said, love one another. Abortion is not love. It's not. Killing people is not love. Here's another thing. And for anybody who's, you know, begin learning the connection between breast cancer and abortion. The best place to go is the Breast Cancer Prevention Institute, I believe it's called. Okay. This is, you know, since 1973, we've seen a rise in breast cancer. It used to be 1 in 12. It's now, I think it's 1 in 7 in situ breast cancer. What a big cover up. Okay. So women have been exploited, and going back to the poverty thing, you want to see an impoverished woman, a woman who's aborted 3 or 4 children, and then by the time she's 47 years old, she has breast cancer. Wow. That's poverty.
Well, I know of a woman who I don't know her personally, but I know of a woman who literally has had 9 or 10, 11, 12 pregnancies, and you know, many of them I know were in fact aborted. Yeah. And there are, and Laurie brings up another point here, and I've got to tell you, Terry, I've got chinks in my armor here. I'm not going to lie to you. I've never lied to my listeners. I'm not going to lie to you. Sure. I may have to answer for it someday. If my daughter is raped, if a girl her father commits incest on her, she's very young. And tell me, you can go ahead and tell me I'm wrong. That's fine. But this is one place I'm not going to offer any advice, but I'm not going to tell her not to do what she believes she needs to do. There, for me here, and this is just me. A woman who consensually engages in anything, whether I don't care, drunk or sober, I don't care. Then there are consequences for that action. But if a woman is surprised, taken down, pinned down, raped, incest committed on her, and we've all heard these horrible stories, and she says, Dad or whatever, I don't want to. I don't want to do this. I'm not gonna suggest that she keep it. That's just me. Now, how wrong am I? That's a chink in my armor that I cannot shed that.
No, and I do fully understand that. I always find it sad that this conversation will pivot to the few cases.
Right, few. I agree.
Because let's get back to the heart of the issue. We've got 63 million aborted children, and that was simply just a choice. And
right.
People using it as, you can't even call it birth control. I guess technically you are controlling the birth.
It's a matter of convenience.
Right. And so I think the most important part is to stay focused on that. But if you were to force me into an answer, I understand why a woman would say exactly what you just said. For me, I think it's so important that woman would need to understand, what's actually happening, that there is actually something good that can come. Here's a beautiful example. Lady lives in Virginia. She was raped in a parking deck. It was like probably 30 years ago. She chose to have the baby and provide a life through adoption. It was quite interesting, though, because she happened to be a woman of faith. When the baby was born, they had the baby baptized, a little baby girl. And then, and that was it. Gone. Okay. 25 years later, that baby, that daughter, finds her mother, her biological mom. And at first, the mother didn't want anything to do, just brought back horrific memories, right? Of being raped in a parking deck. Right. But with further pursuit, the mother agreed to meet her daughter, who lived, Nebraska or something like that. And as the story goes, she and her husband went out there to meet the 20-some-year-old daughter. And she's married. She has 3 children. And she said, "Mom, wait here." And she went upstairs and she came back down the stairs with the little dress that she was baptized in 20-some years ago.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah. So my point is, I understand when you hear these horrible stories, right. But it's also important to hear the flip side. Yeah. That just forget God right now. Okay.
Okay. Right.
Okay. Just putting God aside and religion, and faith, and all that. There's something beautiful. There can be beauty. There can beauty coming out of ashes. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
You think about it. This lady is so happy that she not only preserved the life of that child, but that child looked her up. Her family just grew by 5 people. Now, wait a minute. But what does that really mean? Is it just like raw numbers? No. It's more opportunity to love and to be loved. We forget the love factor. Okay. So anyway, I understand, the arguments, I get it, but it's also important that somebody like me opens my mouth and shares the beautiful stories.
Right.
And they're out there. They're out there. Teenagers who get pregnant and they choose life, and some provide life through adoption and some stick it out, so I just think we've forgotten what love looks like. And love is a beautiful thing. But when we kill life, there is no opportunity to be loved or to love. We
Right.
forgot
I see. You're
love.
removing an opportunity. Yeah.
It is.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to be a Christian to value that. Atheists love. An
Right.
atheist mom and dad who have 3 kids, they love their children just as much as I do.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
we're such a nation that's filled with pride and anger and defense. And if we could just step back and say, wait a minute, if the father of America's industry of abortion lied, deceived, and wanted everybody to know the truth, who am I to say, well, screw him? What does his opinion count? He's the father of the abortion industry.
Amen.
He trained Planned Parenthood. He personally responsible for 75,000 deaths and admitting to exploiting women. And if he can say, I have to, and this is as an atheist, he said, I have to be intellectually honest with myself. So recognizing that there's a shortage of babies, okay? There's so many sterile, infertile couples who are just dying for an infant. And if that little unwanted baby comes into the world and can bring such joy and love, it has to be a more beautiful place.
I wholly agree. And I'm going to do a couple of things here, if that's okay with you. We're getting a lot of comments, a lot that I don't have access to right now because we're on a bunch of platforms. I do want to bring this up before I get to what's on the screen right now, which I think is very, very important from one of our listeners. Now women, and I think Laurie brought this up, and I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have that comment in front of me. Women are abused, they make mistakes, they have regrets, and so forth. And one of the things I always have believed in. So a woman has an abortion. They're going through a tough time. They have an abortion. Oftentimes, we know from data, we know that they have severe regrets and depression afterwards. But I always say for the woman that does make a decision under some sort of duress or depression or abuse, their life is not over, because I believe there is redemption from both humans and obviously from God. That's a promise we have, but also from humans. I believe people can redeem themselves. It's not the end of the world. You have an abortion, you regret it, you wish you hadn't done it. Well, there is redemption. Your life isn't over, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I have to approach it in 2 different ways. One, if somebody is a person of faith, I mean, God is a God of forgiveness and divine mercy, and there's no condemnation. Okay. I do think about the people who don't have a faith channel to go down, and I'm sure it can be very lonely and sad and all, but the good news is there's another day, So when I share all this information about educating America about what the father of America's industry of abortion wanted every American to know, whether you like it or not, okay, it's not meant with any condemnation. In fact, I believe that as more and more women and men who were deceived by having an abortion, and they later on they regret it. Some days it's 2 minutes later or 20 years later. I believe that when they find out that they were just one of millions of people who were manipulated by the lies of Dr. Nathanson, we're actually building up an army of educated people, educated, enlightened. That's why I named it Hosea Initiative. After Hosea 4:6, my people perish for lack of knowledge. Okay, so I want to address that. And then I'm looking at a note here. I'm a child of rape by my mother's stepdad, my father. My mom said I was the light in the darkness. It wasn't my fault. Absolutely. The children who are conceived in rape, their life in the womb has as much dignity as my children who were in my womb who were planned. All right. That every single life, regardless of how it's conceived, so, I mean, all these issues, if we just take a step back and instead of only thinking of negative, let us think of the positive. I mean, just like that story I shared about the baby was conceived in rape, and then 25 years later, the family grows by 5 more people. The daughter, the husband, I think it's a set of twins, and then the other one. It's every life has value. Martin Luther King. I mean, think about it. He was born into poverty. What if he had been aborted, right? Think about Frederick Douglass. Talk about being born into poverty and having every single flipping odd against you. And you grow up to be Frederick Douglass, counselor to 6 presidents, and an entrepreneur, and an orator, and an author, a businessman. What if he had been aborted? It's I'm so sick of the excuse. Well, we get so focused on America. We've lost 63 million babies. That number is so big. You can't even wrap your head around it. 63, and it's all based on lies. How about Norma McCorvey? That's why I put it in the back of the book, her affidavit of 2003. Most Americans do not know that Roe, that's Norma McCorvey, never had an abortion. She never even understood what an abortion is. She got used by 2 activist attorneys, one of whom I believe is still alive, and who took her to a little pizza beer joint, got her drugged up on 2 pitchers of beer, and convinced her to be the plaintiff. And Norma McCorvey didn't even know what an abortion is, had no clue that when an abortion happens, it's stopping an existing beating heart. She didn't know any of this. And 30 years after Roe, she files her affidavit, or attorney does, Alan Parker, at the Supreme Court, begging the Supreme Court to reverse Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, I think that was at the end of the movie as well, wasn't it? I think she spoke at the end of the movie.
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, think about this, America. Think about this. That Roe became 100% pro-life, and the father of the abortion industry became 100% pro-life. And when you put those two, I have a picture of them in my book, but you put those 2 stories together. Actually, here it is. I'm going to hold this up.
There you go. Okay.
So that's Dr. Bernard Nathanson and Norma McCorvey. And there you go. Stories compel, convict, and convert hearts. Okay? So there's Nathanson and Norma McCorvey, the 2 biggest abortion stories of all time. Yeah. And they both became pro-life. So it's I just see a new day coming to America. And when I say that, I really mean it sincerely. You cannot stop light. You can't. You can try, but you can't stop light.
Right. They're trying now. They're trying. They're working overtime to stop the light.
They are. That's so true. Yeah. But isn't it amazing that the more that we stand our ground for truth, the light keeps popping up in all different places. So I believe, I really do mean this, because I would have stopped years ago. Every time I go to stop, and again, I'm a woman of faith. I'm gonna write book number 2 on it. God does something to keep moving this forward. So when I saw that the Supreme Court had chosen December 1st, but can I read a quote from Nathanson's resignation letter?
Oh, absolutely. Please do.
Okay, before I went to publication on my book, Dr. Nathanson's widow called me and she said, Terry, I've been rummaging through his paperwork and I found something that you might be interested in having for your book. And I said, well, what's that? And she said, well, it's his never seen resignation letter to NARAL, Pro-Choice America. And he resigned from NARAL Pro-Choice America on the 2nd anniversary of Roe v. Wade. Okay. And so I won't read the whole thing, but at the very end, this is what Dr. Nathanson wrote. He said, the judgments of the Supreme Court were never meant to be infallible or eternal. And what if we've been wrong? If the court should soon reverse itself on the abortion issue in the light of changing times and or new scientific evidence, what an incalculable injustice will have been perpetrated. What an immeasurable, irretrievable loss will have been suffered. The annual dues of NARAL are $10 a year, and the hubris, the arrogance of certainty. Regretfully, I can no longer meet those dues. Dr. Bernard Nathanson. So I think that's one of the most powerful quotes.
Wow.
And then there's one other, if I can remember it. I share this a lot. Hopefully I can get this out. But at the end of one of his books called The Abortion Papers, this is when he was still an atheist, 100% pro-life. And he gathered up a lot of his paperwork in 1984, and he put it all in a book called The Abortion Papers, Getting Inside the Abortion Mentality. And only had 3 chapters. Chapter 1 was the media, how they manipulated the media. Chapter 2 was fetology, how little they actually knew of the baby in the womb. And then 3rd was called Catholics, how they intentionally went after the Catholic bishops, and I can talk for a long time on that. But at the end of the book, the closing paragraph, he says this, if I can remember this. He said, I believe the abortion ethic is fatally and forever flawed by the immorality of the means of its victory. A political victory achieved by such odious tactics is at best an unstable tyranny spawned by an unscrupulous and unprincipled minority. Disclosure of those odious tactics should compel those who are uneasy with permissive abortion to re-examine the issue. I believe that an America which allows a junta of moral thugs to foist an evil of incalculable dimensions upon it, and then just permits that evil to flower, creates for itself a deadly legacy, a millennium of shame.
Wow.
It's so powerful.
Yeah.
And so what we've done at Jose Initiative, there are basically, it was 8 points of propaganda and strategy. And
right.
we put it all in this little booklet called Fact Check, Who Was America's Abortion King? And a lot of white space and big font, but we go through the 8 different tactics. So point number 1, they frame the argument around choice. Okay. And then we tell the story. Point number 2, they crafted the slogans, my body, my choice. Abortion is a personal decision. Point number 3, they manipulated and used the media. Okay. Number 4, they fabricated the facts. When I learned this, I was like, that takes a lot of courage for an OBGYN to stand in front of the media and to so boldly lie. And what was the lie? He would say, look, reporters, a million women a year are having back alley abortions, and 5,000 to 10,000 women a year are dying due to complications. Well, all those numbers were bald-faced lies. There were never a million illegal abortions going on. The real number was around 98,000, okay? And there were never 5,000 to 10,000 women dying a year. On the high side, it was 200 to 250. And on the low side, it was single digits or in the 20s. Never were there 5,000 to 10,000 women dying a year. So, but millions of people believed it because it came from an OBGYN.
Right.
And then the other thing he would say, check this one out, 60%, 60% of Americans want abortion on demand legalized. Well, what's the problem with that number? When I sat with Dr. Nathans and I said, where did you get the 60% number? And he said, Terry, and I'll never forget it, he clenched his hand, this 83-year-old man, and he pulled it down. And he said, I pulled it out of thin air. He said, because the public relations firm we were working with said that if we're going to create a revolution, we've got to be able to quote stats, and they've got to be over 50%. So he said, I pulled it out of thin air. And I said, well, what was the real number? And he said, and they wrote this in his book too. He said 1/10% of Americans want an abortion on demand legalized when he was quoting 60%.
Wow. I wonder what the number would be today. If a fair study was done, I wonder what that number would be today.
Yeah, I have no idea. And you'd have to really be careful with the study, because of the way they skew the questions. But I don't know. Point number 6, repeat the lies over and over. And we all know that if you repeat the lies over and over in the media, it begins to sound like the truth. Right?
That's Saul Alinsky. I mean, that's right out of Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals.
Yes, sir. That's it. And then point number 7, he justified decriminalizing abortion. Now, everybody listen. He would say, look, the women who are going to have abortions, they're going to have them whether they're legal or illegal. Let's just make it legal, call it a day, so the doctor and the woman aren't going to be felons, blah, blah, blah. Well, It became the self-fulfilling lie, right? Because once it did become legal, I mean, just New York itself in the first year saw 250,000 women descend upon the state of New York because, hey, it's just a blob of tissue. It's not a baby. That was the lie they got away with back then. So it became, but my point is, anytime you legalize something, that's going to increase the demand. This is basic 101 economics, right? And then, if they legalize me being able to drive to town going 75 miles an hour, I'll be driving 77 if it was just legal. So my point is, when you legalize something, it's going to drive the demand up, period. So let us not fall for the lies. And a lot of these lies during Judge Kavanaugh's hearing from Senator Dianne Feinstein, she was getting the lies of yesteryear mixed up. Okay, I thought I was going to throw my TV through the window. That lady was saying, we can't go back to yesteryear where 1 million women were dying every year. And I'm like, daggone it. If you're going to quote the lies, get the lies right. Right?
You're right.
And then lastly, point number 8 was the Catholic strategy. Okay? The Catholic strategy. And we probably don't have enough time to get into the details of that, but just know that NARAL needed a political victory long term. And their problem was they were based in New York. And what does New York have but a lot of Catholics?
Right.
And so they needed to figure out a way to deceive enough Catholics and to try to shut the bishops up so that they would not be a loud voice protecting life in the womb and the dignity of human life. So just know they used 4 points. They would blame the bishops anytime a woman died of complications due to illegal abortion. They would emphasize any Catholic politician who was softening his or her position. Didn't matter if they were Democrat, Republican, Independent. They wanted every politician to be pro-abortion. Number three, they split Catholics into two camps, the Kennedy cool Catholics versus the more orthodox ones who were totally against abortion. There's a whole lot more to this. I'm just really condensing it. And then lastly, they would, it was blame, emphasize, support. Oh, the straddle. Everybody knows it, but what they don't know is that these two men in New York who set out to deceive women and judges and the media and everybody else, they literally devised the Catholic straddle, which was first they applied it to the politicians and then they applied it to the laity and the voters. But Mr. and Mrs. Catholic, you can remain personally against abortion, but vote pro-choice and believe that every woman deserves the right to choose. Yeah. So it was that straddle that you can be against abortion, but still vote. And that is thriving today. And so I've written an article and I encourage people to go read it. It's much more in depth even than the fact check booklet. But if you go to Inside the Vatican, October 2020, type in my name and Catholic Strategy, a 4-page article will come up. Everybody should read this article. And I go into great detail. And as far as I know, we're the only ones in America teaching about NARAL's Catholic strategy. I teach bishops, I teach priests, seminarians. We've taught over 3,000 Catholic kids. That's just in the state of Kansas. So God keeps moving it forward. And I just believe that truth will reign, and that when people can just humble themselves and reconsider and learn the story. Yeah. That's all. That's what Dr. Nathanson was saying, by the way, in that long quote that I memorized, because he's saying disclosure of these odious tactics should compel those who are uneasy with permissive abortion to re-examine the issue. Mm. And there are millions of people who are like, it is a baby. It's like, the lies of yesteryear that it's not a baby. Right. Those days are done. They're done, gone. And so I just think we're getting ready. So my point is this, and then I've got to hop off because I got to get onto a Zoom call with a bishop. Here, my parting message, and I really thank you for the opportunity to get this information out. Thank you. All I ask of Americans is to learn the story. We've got all sorts of material at Hosea, HOSEA, the number 4, YOU.org, Hosea4U.org. Go to abortionking.com, get the book. It for whatever it is, $19.95, I think it is. It's packed with an easy reading story, so much content, plus the affidavit of Norma McCorvey, plus the attorneys who represented Roe when she tried to overturn Roe. They wrote a supplement, an appendix for my book called A Suicide. And this is really important to learn. It's about the 6 erroneous assumptions that the Roe v. Wade court made. There were 6 assumptions, and they were all wrong. And so the attorneys wrote this appendix, and it's so important that people learn this now because Roe may be overturned. And it's important that we have this fundament so there's not civil war, on our hands.
No, we don't want civil war.
No, we don't. But there's so much truth out there that if people just have the truth, at least the millions of people who are in the mushy middle, they will intellectually reconsider their position. That's all I ask. We're not beating people over the head. We're just saying no history. History matters.
Right.
History matters. Imagine if we had never done away with slavery, for God's sake.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I totally agree. And we are running up against the clock here, Terry Beatley.
Thank
But
you. God bless you. And
well,
I wish I had time to read all the comments.
God bless you and Merry Christmas. Two movies I want to suggest to listeners, and I think you'll concur with these, is number one, Roe v. Wade. I mean, it's just a very moving movie, and I'm not trying to say, well, this is going to change her. People have different opinions, and yes, I get a couple of comments on here. We're friends. We're all friends. We have different opinions, and that's okay. But this is how we communicate, maybe move people a little bit. But Roe v. Wade is a great movie. So is the movie Unplanned, which is another fantastic movie.
Absolutely.
And you may know of more, and hopefully we'll talk again sometime, Terry.
Well, my movie will be coming out sooner rather than later, and I'm super pumped about it, and I will definitely let you know. Thank you, and my parting thought is this: women and men, every American has the right to know. That's my message.
There you go, Terry.
Thank you.
Terry Beatley, God bless you. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.